Hi, everyone. So, I've been asked to talk to you a little bit about how I prepared for the MCAT. To get started, I should probably explain who in the world I am and who's this person who's really talking at you. So, hi, my name. I was a graduate of Johns Hopkins University in 2022, where I studied molecular and cellular biology and minored in bioethics and music. I'm now on my gap year before I actually go to the UK for a few years as a Marshall Scholar, first to get a DPhil in Pediatrics at Oxford, after which I'll be attending Harvard Medical School in the class of 2030. I don't know, I don't want to have to do the math on that. So for me, my studying really focused on three primary things. I had a content review focus, I had a focus on memorization, and then a simultaneous focus on practice questions. Now you're asking me, how in the world do you have three simultaneous foci? Well, part of that was enabled by the fact that I studied in the summer after my junior year. And that's something I really, really advocate for people is to actually take the test at the end of a summer, ideally that of your junior year, because you've already seen this material. It's already so fresh that the amount of time you're going to need to input into studying might be half that if you're doing it later. And you then are not, also not juggling a ton of other academic responsibilities. If you can do it in the summer, really highly recommend that. So I had some good time. The only other thing really on my plate was research. So I first really tried to dive into the content. So I spent some time doing memorization, some time doing practice questions, which I'll get to in a moment. But at the very beginning, I really tried to focus in on content review. And the reason I separate out content review from memorization is that they're really doing two different fundamental things. For my content review, I was looking through the Kaplan MCAT books. I went through basically all of them except the behavioral science book. And I really tried to understand the underlying concepts behind everything that was being discussed. Most of this stuff I had seen in class before, but I just need to refresh myself on what exactly maybe this phenomenon meant in relation to this physics term. How could I connect, say, electrochemistry to how a neuron works? And could I find the ways to connect these broader concepts? So I was doing that in conjunction with a lot of memorization on Anki. So for me, I'm a huge, huge advocate for Anki. I use the Miles Down Anki deck, which is one you can just get online. There's actually some newer versions now you can pay a little bit of money for. There's something called Anki Hub if you want to check it out. But for me, bread and butter Miles Down worked, and I don't even think the other things were available yet. And using those so for my content review, I used the Kaplan MCAT book series. I used everything except the behavioral science book because for that, there's actually a Khan Academy document that is really, really well tailored to the content that's actually going to show up on your MCAT. That's available on Reddit if you just search like Khan Academy 110-page MCAT document. That's the best thing I've found to review the topics in addition to memorization, which, like I said, I'll get to. But so I was using these books to review all my general content topics, and I was really trying to understand the fundamental concepts underlying each chapter. So I was trying to see, could I connect, for example, electrochemistry in my chemistry book to what I was learning in my biology book about the action potential of a neuron. Really trying to think about those underlying, those driving concepts. In conjunction with that, like I said, I'm doing memorization with Anki, and there's where I'm really just trying to get down all those random little facts I might need to regurgitate on the exam. All those physics formulas that I can't understand conceptually because they require some big calculus derivation, Anki. All those names for psych-soc terms that I'm going to get mixed up in my head, Anki. Anything that didn't really have a concept I could like kind of hang my thinking onto like a coat rack, those were the things that I really leaned into Anki for. And the nice thing is that the Miles Down deck kind of does that. So as I was going through Anki, I was making sure to suspend cards that I thought were ones that were more conceptually focused, things I already knew, and I was confident in knowing. And that allowed me to really start focusing in on that portion of the Anki deck that was really those memorization points, and then spending the Kaplan time instead really focused on concepts. As my studying progressed, it started to be a little bit more of an intermingling of everything. So I'm doing just the Anki cards that are continuing to give me pause because I've at this point gotten through the entire deck. If you're not familiar what Anki is, it's a fantastic software that will actually figure out what you need studying in a given day and give you just those cards, and it won't give you any of the stuff that it thinks that you already know. It uses a algorithm called spaced repetition, or the theory behind it is called spaced repetition. So something definitely to check out. So at this point, the algorithm really just has me drilling those cards I need help with. And then I'm starting to take more active learning approaches in my like content review too. So for Kaplan now, instead of reading the books and maybe taking some notes on the side about them, really trying to close my eyes and think about the different concepts and how they relate to each other. I may be trying to get out my whiteboard and draw the connections between different hormone pathways on the board and try to see how we talked about carbohydrate metabolism here. How can I show how beta oxidation plays into that? Can I try to connect those two different parts of my chapter together on this whiteboard in front of me? So that was what my content review looked as I was getting closer towards my study date, I would say about a month before. And that's also when my practice questions really kicked up. So I was unusual in that I didn't use UWorld. That being said, I recommend it to basically everyone. The answer explanations of UWorld practice questions are fantastic. Instead, for my practice questions, just relied on the like straight first party AAMC material. The main reason for that, honestly, is I qualified for AAMC the fee assistance program. And what that meant is that all of the AAMC materials were available to me. So I wasn't even able to get through all the AAMC materials, so I didn't find myself needing any additional materials in UWorld, and the answer explanations weren't worth the additional charge for me. If you're paying for individual practice packs, I think there's a real good argument to be made that UWorld is going to be the thing that you should be purchasing fairly quickly after buying just those 5 AAMC tests. The section banks aren't quite as good. But so anyway, I was just going through these AAMC questions kind of in conjunction to my active learning. So with the Kaplan books. So for example, I was doing, as I got closer to my test date, like about a practice test a week, and then crucially making sure that I spent several days afterwards trying to review all the wrong answers. And that was also when my practice questions really kicked up. So I was unusual in that I didn't use UWorld, but I really do advocate for it for most people who are studying. I was different in that I qualified for the AAMC's fee assistance program, so I received all AAMC material for free, and I wanted to make sure that I kind of used what I was given first before I was purchasing anything else. I didn't even have time to get through all the AAMC material. That being said, some of the AAMC's prep material, especially their like question banks, UWorld is actually a little bit stronger in. You want to buy the practice tests from the AAMC as your absolute first purchase. Like those are by far the best. But once you get beyond that, there's actually, I think, a really strong argument to be made for the UWorld material because it has excellent answer explanations. But for me, I didn't have that, so instead I was really leaning on some of the section banks that AAMC has to start off with my questions. And then as I was getting closer to my test, really about at that month point before my exam date, I started doing a full length a week. So I had done one full length for diagnostics before. At the time, there were only 5 exams for me. But then after that 1 month point, I started doing an exam a week. And crucially, the most important thing when you're doing these exams, I mean, you're just learning how to take this test, and that has value. But really, the value comes in reviewing your answers afterwards, especially the things you get wrong and the things that you were unsure about. So reviewing those specific questions was really important to me, but also I tried to look at the broad concept that was being covered, and I tried to see if I could identify gaps in my knowledge. And that was really what my content review then turned into. As I'm approaching 2-3 weeks before my exam, my content review is all go through the things that I'm missing on my full length exams. And that allowed my full lengths to continue to increase, which was very, very nice to see and very motivating. And then as I got into the last week, I kind of got in my head about, did I really have all the terms I wanted memorized, especially for the psych-soc section? So I actually very quickly downloaded the Jack Sparrow deck, which if you don't know is absolutely huge for Anki. And on there, I just tried to review as many cards as I could. I didn't use Anki in the way you traditionally use it, of trying to go through its spaced repetition algorithm. I just tried to familiarize myself with these terms so that I'd have a fighting chance if I saw them come up on my MCAT. On test day, I was surprised that I actually couldn't study as soon as I walked into the room. So, note that down. If you want to do a little last minute studying, don't go into the testing center until you're absolutely ready. Um, but the test was pretty well reflective of what I had seen on my full lengths. I definitely did not feel great about it. I actually considered voiding. But then a month later, it came back and I got a 524. So, was really great to see that the preparation that I've just described to you paid off, and I hope that it can pay off for you too.